This
Hello and
conference will
welcome
now be
everybody.
recorded.
Hello and welcome everybody to the CCWC webinar starring Jeanne Bowerman. There's our beautiful Jeannie there. She's been busy fighting City Hall and got to take time off to come and talk to us. So Jeannie's going to talk a little bit about what her masterclass is going to be like, but specifically we're just going to kind of chat about what it's like to infiltrate Hollywood without getting a Hollywood address. Because both Jeannie and I have done that, and just kind of a little taste of what her 6-hour masterclass is going to be like. That will be on September 26th this year at Quest College. Hi, Jeannie.
Hi. That's if you can handle spending 6 hours with me, but I'll try to make it fun.
Well, Peter does the crying class, so I figure yours will be the drinking class.
Oh yeah, we're not crying in my class. There's none of that like self-exploration. We're not doing any of that. We're just gonna tell you how to have some balls of steel.
Peter, there you go.
Send all the criers over to Peter.
How to make it in Hollywood. Balls of steel required.
Yeah. Required.
We love Peter. So, okay, so maybe talk a little bit about your journey, your screenwriter journey.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the landscape of Hollywood is changing so much. So even before we decided to do this, cover this topic in the masterclass, other things popped up and changed, like WGA, everybody firing their agents. And, now there's this whole other landscape and people are really, I feel like there's never been a better time for you to kind of take control of your own destiny. And so I think this is going to be a really exciting time and things will change even more between now and September. I mean, it's very fluid right now. But for me personally, when I started screenwriting, it was like 2007, I think. And I went to classes and conferences and things like that. But also, there's like social media, and social media has changed. I joined Twitter in 2009, and in 2010, like 2009, 2010, everybody was really friendly and nice and happy, and they really went to social media because it was kind of like their water cooler for writers, especially when you're working from home and you're very isolated. And oh, I hear my dog running up the stairs, and it was woo, hi honey, it was a real it was just a fun place to be. And that's like where I met Doug Richardson, which all you guys who've been to the Central Coast Writers, they know, everybody knows him there. But you were used to be able to connect with people on social media a lot more and really make those signs, not really pitching on social media, but making like a network and a connection that you could carry on then into real life. So one of the things that we're going to talk about in the class is how to do that, how to successfully do it in a way that doesn't make you look like a stalker or crazy person, and but also recognizing that social media has changed a lot. So it's a little bit more challenging. Like on Twitter, people will now have political arguments, which is really don't do that, but we'll go into more detail about that and why, because there really are a lot of producers and agents and networks and studio heads and people who you are trying to get meetings with and trying to have a relationship with. One of the first things they do is go to your social media to see if you're a Looney Tune crazy bird. And that doesn't mean that we're talking about specific political ideology. You can share the same ideology as them. It's not necessarily about that. It's more about how you present yourself and how you may choose to engage in conversations with people online.
I did. I fixed it. I pushed the wrong button. Go ahead.
Did it start
Keep
again?
going. Sorry.
Okay. So technical difficulties. And so, but now they'll look at and they'll see like, how do you engage with other people? Are you somebody that they want to talk to and deal with? And because some of these projects are going to last a couple of years to get off the ground. And it always brings me back to the thing that I said last year, just don't suck. So a lot of working outside of Hollywood, it's like you have to work so much harder and be so much more methodical and prepared about how you go about your process, because you can't have those serendipitous meetings in a coffee shop, you know? So we'll talk about that, like how to do networking, and how to build. The other thing that you'll need is like, a website. And so we'll talk about the importance of a website and how to create one that is SEO friendly and people could find you through search engines, some of the top must-haves that you should have on your website. And I'll give you an example. Like, a lot of screenwriters say, why do I need a website? Like, I'm a screenwriter. Like, I'm not gonna, do blogs or anything. I'm a screenwriter. Well, I mean, you could put up samples of your work. You could, things like that. If you've done a short film, you could put up embed a YouTube link to your short film, or Vimeo link. But really what you're trying to show people is how to tell a story. And personal essays are telling a story. So even if you never thought about writing them, it's a good way to do it. I've had people approach me for jobs, not just in screenwriting, but regular writing jobs, just because they saw my blog and they offered me an article. That's how I got my first article in Writer's Digest in 2010 or 11, I think it was before I was an employee there. And then when that article came out in the Writer's Digest magazine, it took, I think, like a year and a half for it to come out. But when it came out in that finally in that magazine, I had a screenwriting agent, read it and call me and say, "Oh my God, like, I want to talk to you. I love how you write. I love your voice." So don't think that just writing screenplays is what you need to do. Writing all different kinds of things. And so we can explore that and talk about that. Like last year, I think for Central Coast, I taught a class about that, writing for magazines and getting articles published. And so I can bring I think I had a handout for that, so I can bring that for you guys too. So just really, like, all the different areas and aspects and ways that you can break in from outside. Even things like, taking your online network offline. So say on my social media platform in Twitter, it says I'm from New York. I live in New York, but I live in New York State, like upstate New York. I don't live in the city, but I purposely let people think I live in the city because more people are going to come to New York City on vacation or for business or whatever. And so they'd see, oh yeah, Jeannie's from New York. I'm going to call her and see if she wants to meet for a cup of coffee. And then I'll hop on a train, I'll go down to New York, and I don't even necessarily tell people that I don't live in the city. Like, and once I get there, then I tell them. But I don't like them to think that they're putting me out of my way, because then they might not ask me. So I always, make sure they feel welcome to invite me to do something. Every time I go to LA, I make sure I meet with the people who I met with last time and meet with somebody else as well. The other great little trick, because I'm trying to give you some like insights into the kinds of things we're going to talk about, is always like pay it forward in a way where you're, like, say you're gonna be in LA or gonna be in Chicago or gonna be wherever, New York, wherever. Find people in your network who you think could use each other and think that would connect. And if you know an actress and you also know a casting director, invite them with a group of other people for drinks, and then they'll organically meet each other. And if they feel like you're doing something, even just serendipitously, nicely, very organically, in a way that comes out positive for them, it makes them feel really warm and fuzzy about you. And then you maintain that relationship, and they see you as somebody who is collaborative, thoughtful, and not someone who's just all about me, 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 me. I mean, you almost have to be like just so much more of a helpful, insightful human when you're not, when you have to get over that big hurdle of not being in Los Angeles. So we're going to cover a lot.
Well, and I know from here on the Central Coast that when I sold my first screenplay, they just consider the Central Coast a suburb of LA.
Yeah.
Because I can make it there in 2.5 hours. But one of my producers that lived in Orange County, it took her as long to get to a meeting as it took me to get there.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it really wasn't a big deal. It was just like, yeah, I live up here and I can be there in 2.5 hours. So
yeah. And I mean, and I'm in New York, but I find that like like I've got friends who live in LA and um a lot, but in the beginning, when I would go to LA, I remember one of my friends was there for like 6 years, and then I come walking in, you know, and I had more meetings than she in 1 week than she had in a year. Because when people know I'm coming into town, oh gee, they can't keep bumping me. You know, that you do get bumped. But so like if you have an important meeting, like even if you're going down to LA from the Central Coast, it's 2.5 hours. I mean, why just go down for the day? Go down for a few days, set up an important meeting on the first day of your trip in case you do get bumped. Like whenever I've pitched HBO, like it's pretty common for them to bump you. So I always come in like the night before I'm gonna pitch them just in case and stay like 10 days or a week, usually a week. And then but I've stayed sometimes just 4 days, 3 days. Um, and to give them time to push you out. So I personally find that people are more respectful of my time because I come in from outside of LA. And that they actually, oh, you're coming to town, and they'll move their schedule around. And whenever I'm there, I always connect people who I think would be benefit from working with each other, and it's been great. What else do you want to talk about?
awesome. Yeah.
What
So
else? We might have some
I
cocktail.
yeah, exactly. And I think all of that is very valid, and it's so you are such the connector, and you're so fun to be around that it's easy to take a meeting with you. But you also have unique ideas, and you bring unique ideas, and you're not afraid of your unique ideas. And I think that's what a lot of early screenwriters are afraid of. Oh, they weren't not going to like this idea. They like Jurassic Park, so I'm going to make it like Jurassic Park. And it's like, no, make it your own authentic you, and that will get you much farther than anything else, right?
Yeah, I think like there's the strategies, and I think this is why like at first I was thinking, okay, 6 hours we're going to talk about all of this, but there is a lot to explore, and I think it's important that we're also going to brainstorm things with each other, help each other come up with stuff. But when it comes to like there's the strategy of the business of how you function in the business side of writing, which is really where the challenge comes in from living outside of LA, is the business aspect. The writing aspect, you can live anywhere, but there's certain things about the writing aspect that up your chances of getting discovered. And so you need to be thinking about both when you're from, especially outside, but even inside LA, you still need to think about both. And all of these things that we're talking about still apply to people who live in Los Angeles as well. A lot of the tips are still are can be worked for people who live anywhere. And so like when you talk about original ideas, something that's high concept is and we'll go into that. We'll go into some depth about what makes a script a high concept idea, and how to elevate that idea. And so maybe we can take some of your like log lines that you have for the scripts that you're working on, and like brainstorm ideas together to kind of elevate them, the ideas, a little bit more to make them really unique. Like when you hear the film Liar Liar, Jim Carrey, you already have an image in your head of what that's going to be. That's kind of stuff that makes something high concept. And so we'll dive into that and how to really um, or find that project that it's could be an adaptation. Like for me, the thing that really propelled me and opened a lot of doors for me was when I found this book called Slavery by Another Name, which I've talked about at Central Coast before, but and I approached the author because it was just a really fascinating nonfiction book that was written in 2008, and so in 2008, right when I saw it come out of the paper, I started like looking at this author, like what kind of guy he is. I know I love the book, I know I love the subject matter, but I want to adapt this. But why he was at the time he was the Atlanta bureau chief of the Wall Street Journal, and it's like, why would he ever want to have me, like I'm a nobody, like why would I, he'd want me to adapt his book. But you have to just ask. And so what I did was I followed him as closely as I could online without crossing that stalker line. And I wanted to see what kind of person he was. Like if he was somebody who was approachable, if he was somebody who I thought would be open to me suggesting that I adapt the book. And so I found his website. I Googled him. I watched any interview I could find of him, read interviews of him. And then all of a sudden, 5 months after I had noticed the book, it showed up on the New York Times bestseller list. And I thought, oh crap, I lost my chance. Now Oprah's going to call him and whatever. Well, Oprah never called him, but Spike Lee did. And I immediately sent him an email and I was like, I'm going to be in Atlanta for business. Um, so I'd love to see you because that's where he was from. I'd love to see you. I'd love to talk to you about potentially adapting the book. And he responded back the next day and he's like, do I know you? Like, are you famous? And I'm like, no, but I'm gonna be like, after you let me adapt your book. And we talked on the phone for like a half an hour and and he said, so if you're coming down for business, he goes, I can't really promise you that I'm going to be available. It's hurricane season. And at the Atlanta Bureau, Wall Street Journal, they covered a lot of the hurricanes. So he goes, I don't know if I'm going to be in town or not, but if I am, yeah, let's get together and talk. So I fly down there and I was not going to be there for business. I had no business in Atlanta. I was totally lying. And but I got there and I spent 3 days there. And in the course of that 3 days, we met like 3 or 4 times. And I didn't offer him any money. Did not have any produced writing credits. I just had a lot of passion for the project. And he said to me, don't discount that passion means something. And so we proceeded for the next 6 months. I followed him around the East Coast, wherever I could get to, wherever he was speaking, so that I could sit in the audience and watch the audience's reaction to this project and this important work. And after about 6 months, and I kept sending him stuff, sending him character descriptions and outlines and all this stuff. And he finally said to me after 6 months, he goes, damn it, woman. I wanted to say no to you, and you just made it impossible for me to say no to you because I really like what you've done. So I just proceeded as if he had said yes. And then he ultimately said yes. And since we had written it as a feature film and also as a limited series, and the book was done as a documentary, which I did not do, but and that was, I started working with him in 2000. Oh, and while we were doing the first draft of the feature, the book won the Pulitzer Prize. So because I had that project opened a lot of doors. So you can have your own high concept idea, or you can get the rights to adapt something. Things are in the public domain. You don't have to get something that's current. There's a lot of old backlists of things that are interesting. And even if they're not on the public domain, but they're an older book that may have been overlooked by Hollywood, it might have been something that a studio had gotten the rights for, but then the rights are back on the market again. They'd put it in turnaround or whatever. So, it's worth taking the time to find that really the right project, the one that is really going to get pop and get you noticed. And that will open doors, because like even when I've got friends who are agents and managers and they'll I'll want to pitch something, or I've got a friend who I know they're looking for a romantic comedy or something, and I've got a friend who writes rom-coms, and they'll say, oh, send me the log line. So I'll send the log line from one of my friends, and that's literally how they will make their decision, just looking at the
All
log
right.
line.
Explain to them what a log line is.
So a log line is just like, how like, do you remember, I don't know if anybody still gets the TV Guide. Does anyone still?
I don't think so. I don't even think there's a digital form, and I think we should get one because I need to know what's on Netflix and what's on Prime and what's on Hulu,
Right.
and we need one again.
I know. You know what they should? They should
get
do
on
one
that.
with all the streaming things. But so it's sort of like, or like, it's like just like that little blurb, like you would see, how, okay, no TV Guide. You've got Direct TV. and it's got the info thing. You click on the info and it gives you that sentence that kind of lets you know, do I want to watch this movie? Gives you like this quick little sentence about it. So that's really what a logline is. It's got to have, and we'll go over this too. There's so many, that's 6 hours. We can talk about everything. Um, so we'll, because it's got to have like the main character, the antagonist in it, what the main character's goal is, so you know what you're rooting for. So you've got their goal, but you also include in the log line so that when they read it, they can see, oh my God, there's going to be so many conflicts in this. Like this is going to be really hard to do. And also portray in some capacity some emotional journey that the person is going to have to go through in order to achieve their goal. You know, like what's stopping them internally. And it seems like a lot of things to convey in 1 or 2 sentences, and it is. And that's why writing log lines is a very hard thing to do. And so that's why when a manager or agent makes a decision based on your log line, part of it is because how well can they write and convey something succinctly to me? Because that tells me if you hit all those marks in your log line, you're going to have hit all those marks in the story. So the log lines are a lot more important than people think, and should be, a lot of time should be spent on them. I hate writing them, but because they're really hard, but you need to. So those are also
you need to do it. Plus, it's like you've taken 50,000 words and put them in order, and now they want you to disseminate it down to 20.
I know, you're like, yo, bastard, what? Like I just
just go see the movie.
Yeah, just read it. Read the script. Read it. Just read it.
So talk a little bit about Pitch Fest for people that have never been to them. How do you get into them? What do you do once you're there, and what's expected?
I love Pitch Fests. I'm probably one of the few people who do, because it's not, they're not just about sitting there and pitching a bunch of agents and managers and producers. There are a lot of production companies, a lot of producers at them, but it's also about meeting each other, meeting other writers, just being with your tribe, being with people. I mean, think about the way you feel when you're at Central Coast for the weekend. Magnify that, because it's this really intense experience where everybody is putting their work out there. The number of pitch fests available now has definitely declined. Unfortunately, there's not as many as there used to be. There's kind of like a bad connotation about them for some people. Some people feel really negative about them, like I shouldn't have to pay to pitch, and there's certain people like John August and Craig Mazin. If you listen to their podcast, they are not fans of pitching events, and I think to tell people that you're going to sell your screenplay at a pitching event is irresponsible, and that very, very rare to happen. But what is going to happen at a pitch fest, and I think that's why maybe they're marketed not correctly, and I think if people, and maybe that's why some people are against them, but if you think about it from the perspective of having realistic expectations, and you think about this is what this is really about, what pitch fests are really about is learning how to pitch, getting comfortable talking about your story, getting comfortable presenting yourself. I mean, I started my first pitch fest, I think, was 2007, and I went to Great American Pitch Fest every year for years and years and years, and that is how I learned how to pitch and got really comfortable. And then those people who you pitch to at Pitch Fest, they're often assistants, sometimes assistants to assistants. So they're not the people who are going to make the decisions. And that's why it's really important that you go there with that mindset. There are some pitching events that have, they'll say stuff like William Morris is there and CAA is there and, all that stuff. But they're sending lower level people there. And so it's really important that if you have like a one sheet that has your kind of like your story. One sheet is something like, that has your log line on it that we talked about earlier, and then a little synopsis of your story, which is almost like your pitch and your contact information on it. So when you pitch the person, you're going to pitch them and you're going to do it naturally, not memorized, just like you're talking about, hey, yeah, I saw this really great movie yesterday, and you just, go off and talk about it. But in your one sheet, it's going to be written out nicely, no typos, all that kind of stuff, so that you leave that person with your one sheet, because what that person's job is to absorb what you pitched, to say to you, it's a pass. Maybe we're working on something that's similar to that, or this really isn't our thing. We don't really do this kind of stuff. So, but it's a pass for us. Or they'll say, send me the treatment, send me the script. Is usually what you'll hear from them. So I bring my one sheets with me, because sometimes if they don't want anything, I'll leave, like if they don't want the script or anything, I'll leave them with the one sheet, because if they say, well, let me talk to my boss about that, because they've got to take all these pitches back to their boss and they'll look at them. And if you've written it down, that person, you're not relying on them to remember your pitch, because they're listening to a ton of pitches all day long. So you want to make it easy for them to show that to their boss. But the time when I don't leave my one sheet behind is if in my conversation with them, I've got a story that maybe has a 22-year-old male protagonist. And in the conversation, I realize this person wants a protagonist who's 45 and female. And then I'll think to myself, I'll switch my pitch up, and I'll and so I don't want to leave them with the one sheet, because it's not going to match my pitch. So you want to make sure that if you've had to make adjustments of your pitch and they want the one sheet, say, oh, no problem. I ran out of copies. I'll email you one. And then you go back to your hotel room and you fix it, and then you email it, the corrected one, to them. So there's just and I've met so many great writers that way. And even some of the assistants who I've pitched to pitching are now everybody bounces companies. So they might have started, at Paramount or Paradigm, or like some other company, and then all of a sudden they're somewhere else, and then you follow them and you're like, oh, remember me? We went to I met you at this pitch fest in 2012, and they're like, oh yeah, I remember that story, yeah. And so we'll go into depth about how to navigate those pitching events, and I'll have a list of the ones that are still current, and then and give you that kind of strategy of how you work those events, because that gets you into LA. And those are the best ones to go to, the ones who are either close to LA, like at Central Coast, they get a lot of agents and stuff coming up from Los Angeles. So anywhere where you look, go to the conferences and events where you can look and see who the speakers are, and you get a good feel for where, that they really are somebody who is established in Los Angeles and not like in Kentucky. I mean, because you can be from outside of LA, but your agent or manager should have close access to LA. Did you freeze on me, Terry? So we'll cover all of those things, like which conferences are good, all that kind of stuff.
So at the writers conference, sorry, I lost your audio and I talked over you. I apologize. We have the personal critique sessions, and so everybody that comes there gets one of those, and they can meet with either an agent or a publisher or someone who works in movies, or we have, I think, 7 screenwriters this year that are working screenwriters that you can talk to, and if they like it, they will shepherd your project back. And there's nothing better than that.
Yeah, and I think it's also good to just talk to them, even if you don't have a piece of work that you want that is ready to be critiqued. If you want to spend that 15 minutes talking to them about like, hey, this is my deal, and what advice would you give me? And, they are more than happy to have those conversations too. It's not like, I know for me, when I talk to the people at Central Coast, I love it because I get to like meet them and hear about other projects people are working on, and the things that they're passionate about. And so I think it's important to also take advantage of that. like their expertise of how they got in, and how maybe they could give you some advice about how for you to get in as well. I think Central Coast is definitely, and this isn't just like some, blow and smoke thing. It is 1,000% my favorite. And because of the speakers who are there, like there's some conferences I've been to that they'll keep the speakers like all off and separate, and so you can't really have any dialogue with them. I don't go to those. Like, if I go to a conference once and it's like that, and they don't have the speakers and the attendees together, really being able to interact with each other, to me, those aren't good conferences. Like, you need to really be able to get, right in there with the speakers and feel welcome. And when you've got a conference that has that kind of energy and environment like Central Coast has, it attracts the kind of speakers who want to engage and who want to really help people. So you're already coming to a place where you're full of professionals who really want to pay it forward and reach back and give advice to people. And so it's just a really great experience. And I know whenever I'm there, I kind of want to go take some of the other classes, because I'm like, can I just go over to his class? Because really, that looks so good.
Well, the one thing that's happening this year that has never happened before is I have an audio recording company that's coming in to do every single class. So you'll be able to buy the audio recording of it afterwards. And it's like $5 per class.
Well, what about the master class? Are you going to do that for those too?
Yeah, he'll be there for the master classes too, although it's not going to be as streamlined because it's 6 hours, but yeah.
And it's different because you can't, for the master class, what I think is great about the master class is that you really get to roll your sleeves up and dig into stuff. Like I'm a big action item person, so I want people to walk away saying, holy crap, that bitch gave me a whole bunch of stuff I need to do, But I want people to walk away saying, like, being able to say, okay, I've got my URL, I've got my website, now I'm going to do social media, I'm going to do a conference plan, I'm going to do a whole plan of, like, these are the goals, these are my goals for the next, my 5-year goal, my 1-year goal, like how, to really just kind of focus you so that you can think to yourself, like, okay, I just need to take these little baby steps and then I'm going to get there. And that's really how you have to do it. You have to be pretty methodical about it. I should be taking notes. As I'm talking, I'm going, oh yeah, I'm going to need to do that. Seriously, take a note right now.
Taking your own advice.
Well, no,
so the master class is on Thursday. It starts at 10. And it ends at 4, and then you have lunch with Jeanne, and then afterwards Jeanne will continue to be a mentor to the 20. It's limited to only 20 students, so it's very intimate, very small, and very roll up your sleeves. And Jeanne, look at the script, and so you'll be writing and doing, and then you're teaching 2 or 3 other classes too, aren't you? Workshops.
I am. I don't remember what they are.
I know. I was on the radio with Wendolyn and Mark and Ricky yesterday, and I'm like, you're teaching another class, and they're like, so let me pull out what it is.
Yeah, I know, like, I'm on panels. I think I'm on a panel.
Yeah, you're on the panel.
Danny Manis.
Go ahead.
I think I'm on a panel.
He's funny.
He is, Danny
is funny. Great.
One of my favorite people. But at Central Coast before, I don't know that I'm teaching it this year. I taught adaptation before. I taught something like the breaking in from outside of Hollywood, but on like a smaller scale, just like just a 1 session thing. But
it was a 1-hour class. And I remember Doug and I came and sat and watched it, and Doug's hitting me the whole time going, everyone should take this class. And I'm like, I agree. This is the best information I've ever heard. And you could have gone on for 6 hours and we would have been riveted. It was so good. So it was like a natural when I was doing the master classes.
Yeah. So we're going to.
And so, the other thing, kind of the Hollywood thing. So if somebody just has an idea for a script, your class would work for them, right?
Yeah, because you have to.
They just want to.
Because if we have like,
dabble
so
their toes in it.
yeah, like I want to try to figure out like ways to make it helpful for everyone. So I think one of the things that like I'll go into my whole spiel or whatever and kind of hit the high points of the things that we're going to talk about. But based on who these 20 people are who were in the class, like say there's nobody in there who, has any desire to ever move to Los Angeles or ever make, like, so then we'll all like shift gears about, when to move there, like that kind of stuff. Because if you're never going to move there, whatever. But I want to find out like what each person's ultimate goal is for their career so that we can shift gears and make sure I touch on whatever I know about that. And also, you also never know who else is going to be in the class. Like there might be somebody who's done whatever it is you want to do and is like, oh yeah, this is how I did it. And I'm very big into people sharing their experience, and because there really is no one way to do this. And so I will obviously tell you what worked for me in terms of making connections and how I get meetings and keep, being out there. But there's not like there's as many ways to break in as there are people who have broken
Yeah,
in.
that's for
You know,
sure.
and there's
So my little story was I wrote a script that I meant to shoot myself because I wanted to make a movie. I didn't so
yeah,
much want to write one, I wanted to make a movie. So I wrote a movie that I could shoot in my house using my children, using my dogs, using my husband. Everybody against their will was going to be part of my movie. And it was about the art of storytelling, and because I raised my kids with no TV, I was a cable Nazi, they used to call me. And I made them tell stories. That was how they paid for things. They had to tell me a story, and I still do it with my grandchildren. But so I sent my script down to my cousin, who's in LA, and at the time she was a computer fixer. It was right when computers and PCs were first coming out. So she was a brilliant computer scientist. So she went down there and then she started fixing computers. And of course, she's in Hollywood. So she ends up fixing really famous people. And she had just signed on to be Morgan Freeman's partner. And
oh,
I knew she had written a bunch of stuff. And so I went down there just to have lunch with my cousin, and I give her the script and say, look at it and see if you have any ideas. And she's like, okay, let me look at it and send it around the team, and then I'll send it back to you. 6 weeks, Morgan Freeman saying he's buying my script. And I'm like, okay. At first, I thought it was somebody pranking me because I have a terrible, terrible habit of pranking people. So I
yeah,
think I told him
no,
to F off and hung up on him. Yes, I did. And then, so then the funny thing was happened. So then we go in production with, it was called Hookah. And we go into production and we're meeting every day. I have like 9 producers. Disney picked it up, so they were going to run with it. We had a $32 million budget. It was
wow,
awesome, but it was called Hookah, and that was in 2001. And September 11th, the towers fell, and so everything that was Middle Eastern left the vernacular of the
yeah,
United States. But they kept having me coming down, and so meanwhile, I'm sitting there in these meetings, listening to each of these producers and kind of chronologing in my brain what they want. And then I just started writing for them because they're already in the business. They already
yeah,
know it. I remember I pitched this Christmas movie to Morgan, which is still in pre-production. And I just happened to have an elderly black man that lived in the back of the house. And he's like, this is brilliant. It's almost as if you wrote it for me. I'm like, what? I didn't say, well, I did, but I did because he had said he always wanted a Christmas movie, that he wanted to be popped in the DVD and the family sit around and see his Christmas movie every year. And so at that point, I had 9 producers that were all brand new because it was a brand new company. But now they've gone on. I mean, they're doing Madam Secretary and
yeah,
all of these things. And I still have their ear because I started writing for them
yeah,
and stopped writing for me.
yeah,
So that's my
yeah.
2
And I think
cents.
it's also like that, you talk about like what do you write? Like writing what you know. Like people always talk about that. Like write what you know. Well, I don't know. I kind of feel like write what you don't know. Like if if your life was that interesting, Most people's lives are really not that interesting unless you're Terry. You know, because maybe Terry could do
I know
it.
they used to give me a hard time that the male characters, the fathers, were too outlandish. And then they met Gary and they're like, oh no, you're dead on.
Now we get it. Now we get it.
Now
Yeah.
we get it. We walked into a premiere, a big movie premiere, and it was like the second shift because they do them in shifts. And Gary sits down, and there's a red sweater that's been left in the seat, and he takes it. Normal people would just walk it up to the front, right? No, Gary believes in this concept of come across. If he finds anything, then it's meant to be his. So he puts this sweater on. And he's like, oh, look, it fits. And it's clearly a female sweater. And then the woman comes back and she's like, what are you doing with my sweater? And he takes it off and gives it to her. And I'm like, see, I'm not even making it up.
Yeah, we won't get into like the van. We'll just move on. But no, we don't want to scare people. Gary will not be at the master class. Stealing your sweaters.
Yeah, we'll just scare him away. So,
Yeah.
okay, so we're ready for questions, and your master class is Thursday, September 10th. You're also teaching writing your first script in the beginning writing track, and then you're on two panels: why you should write a movie and why it's important to write a movie. And then the one with Danny Manis is.
I thought he was on both of my panels.
I think he's in both because I put all of you screenwriters together, writing the perfect script. So it's just little tidbits on how to write the perfect script. Huh?
That's easy to do. Just
no problem.
No problem.
No problem. But then she's also, doing PCSs, and she'll be at the networking events and afterwards in my cottage drinking tequila.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's gonna be super fun this year. I just hired Monica Piper. I'm pretty excited about her. She wrote Rugrats.
Oh, fun.
And she now does stand-up comedian and one-woman shows. Yeah, so I think she's gonna fit in really well with this group. So I'm very excited about that. So if you haven't signed up for the conference, I'm sorry, masterclass is the 22nd, 26th, yes. Just, don't listen to Terry, she's rambling. September 26th is the master classes, and then that evening is our first keynote with a wine and cheese reception, wine and food reception, and then the rest of the conference starts on Friday morning with our opening keynote, which is Sam Horn, and then with classes, and then that night
I can't hear your audio.
to the Inn at Morro Bay to have. Is my audio being bad?
I couldn't hear your audio. I don't know if it's just me.
I couldn't hear yours half the time either. We'll see it when on the recording.
I'm reading your lips right now.
Courtney says she can hear me.
We need your cousin to fix the computer.
I know.
I can't hear you.
Anyway, so and then Saturday we go from 9 till 6 with a closing keynote with Mary Loverty. So, and then we're going to do a storytelling around the campfire at the Inn at Morro Bay on Saturday night before we slink away and go into a coma. You still can't hear me? Courtney can hear me. And everybody can hear both of us. So just talk.
If they can hear you.
Yeah, they can hear me.
Okay, good. Then it's just me. I guess I don't need to hear. As long as they can hear you. You pop in and out. So I hear you now.
There you go. So what we'll do is we'll record this masterpiece and then we'll put it on a YouTube link and we'll share it for later. So it will be available for everybody to take a look at. So please share it with everybody you know and come to the conference, right?
Oh my God, this conference legit. And I'm not like some legit the best. The thing I look forward most to all year. It's really
I hear that from a lot.
Yeah,
and
and I met some really great people, and I'm not just talking about other speakers. I mean, like people who attend. Like, I'm so impressed with a lot of the people who attend, and I'm love meeting them and talking to them. It's just fantastic time. And such a beautiful area. I mean, you guys get to live there. I mean, it's like criminal. It's beautiful.
I know.
Who would want to live in LA?
I know. I feel that way too. I know. I know. At one point, I seriously thought of moving there when I was writing a bunch of stuff and being a script doctor. I'm like, I'm just going to move to LA. And I think I tried it for like 3 weeks, and I was like, no, no, this isn't me. I can't wear clothes. I have to wear flip flops and sundresses. I can't get dressed up like they think. Oh, Lord. So, anyway,
I never
so we just drive there.
Yeah, I never dress up when I'm there. I'm in my jeans and flip flops all the time. Even when I'm pitching HBO, I'm in my jeans and flip flops. I don't get dressed up.
That's fun. All right. So how do they find you, Jeannie?
How do you find me? On you can go to Twitter, and my handle is Jeanne VB, like JeanneVV as in Victor, B as in boy. And my website is jeannevb.com. And Script Magazine. I'm the editor.
The editor of Script Magazine.
Yes, I'm the editor-in-chief of Script Magazine and a senior editor at Writer's Digest. And so I have articles on both of them. I have a lot more articles on Script because I've been there for so long. And my column there is Balls of Steel, which I got to get back to writing my Balls of Steel column. But I also have a regular column in Writer's Digest print magazine called Take Two, where I talk about screenwriting, different things about screenwriting. And then after a while, we put it up on the Writer's Digest website too. Those articles are up there too. So I'm all over the place. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm terrible at LinkedIn.
She has an antique store in upstate New York if you want some really cool old stuff.
If you're ever around Chatham, New York, I have this fabulous antique store. It's called Old 1811 Antique Shop. It is the oldest building in Chatham. We have ghosts and lots of great little treasures in there that are really, kind of inspiring. When you look at these old things, imagine, what was this, so anyway, those are just some fun things. But feel free to reach out and connect with me on social media. I know that kind of stuff. I think it's social for a reason, and you should be engaging. I will say I'm not good at LinkedIn, and so do not send me a LinkedIn message because it might take me months before I see it.
The only every time I look at LinkedIn is when somebody says they've been looking at you. I just want to know who's looking at me. Other than that, I don't go there.
Do you do like the pro version so you can actually see who looks at you? Like,
no, they give me the free ones, and then that satisfies my curiosity enough.
I'll look and see if someone's stalking me, and then whatever. But yeah, I don't like that they even do that, but that's a whole other story.
I know, it's
Imagine
kind of weird.
Facebook did that.
All right, all right, well, thank you, Jeannie. And all of the information is on the Central Coast Writers Conference.com website. And we'll see you in September.
Perfect. I'll be there with bells on.
And flip-flops.
And flip-flops.